Immersion. A word moulded into an infinite space of creativity. From pushing a button to creating fear onto the big screen. A word that can emotionally keep us in shock, or a word that can stop us in a heartbeat. But what pushes us forward? What keeps us engaged? What makes us try again in a game? What keeps us on the edge of our seat in a film? But most importantly, what keeps us limited?
Get over here! Get over here!
We live in a time when immersion has become an ever-present phenomenon within the digital age, a term that allows for visual, audio, and tactile stimulation. This leads us to wonder, where is immersion most likely to be permanently anchored? The answer resides in the mental and physical medium of both film and games. Film and video games have ever evolved to converse in a newly found form of immersive experiences. But what about the mental and physical demands? And which form of media has reigned supreme? Let's begin with what makes film and games successful in their respective medium, beginning with film. It is incredible how many factors contribute into bringing a film to life. But we all know the common factors of the story, actors, and the setting all contribute into a variety of the most well-known films of all time, which lead us into what makes these three elements especially important. Let's take a look at The Great Train Robbery from 1903, a 13-minute silent crime drama full of entertaining and Western genre aesthetics, remarkable acting performances from a full cast of actors, and an accurate and convincing location where the production was shot. Despite its early appearance, the film can be viewed as one of the earliest attempts to depict a plot-driven narrative to which we are all accustomed to in today's media. We see the effect of other directors taking inspiration and influence from the events of The Great Train Robbery, including Martin Scorsese. He cited the event in the final shots of the crime drama in Goodfellas, which he directed.
Basically, in Goodfellas, it's a bunch of outlaws who do this incredible robbery, and then they all kill each other, and the police get them at the end. It's exactly the same story.
It is clear from the context of films like The Great Train Robbery and Goodfellas that both rely on the same type of immersive components that we see on the big screen today, as the common goal of film is to provide the viewer with a sense of escapism from the real world and join the story alongside the characters as they watch the story unfold. It is likely that this classic filmmaking trope will continue to serve as the main type of passive media in the future of the film industry. Video games, however, has its success determined by the gameplay, the story, and the unique challenges the players face as they go through the game. Nintendo's Donkey Kong from 1981 was well known for allowing players to see the plot unfold on the screen for the first time. Japanese game designer Shigeru Miyamoto was responsible for developing and directing the game, as the emphasis was on communicating a completely new perspective on how a player can interact with the game.
でそういう中で僕はドンキーコングからずっとシリーズを作っていくうちにちょっとそれと相反する問題のゲームが現れてきたわけです。
It was with this objective in mind that I created the Donkey Kong series, and yet at the same time, we saw a new style of game emerge that contradicted this model.
As a result, it was essential that the entire story in its simplest form be presented on screen effectively so that the player could appreciate the overall focus of the game. As the player progresses through the levels, Donkey Kong, accompanied by his girlfriend, climbs to the next level, displayed by cutscenes depicting the ape escaping. The use of help speech represents the damsel in distress's cry for help. This use of text is where plot is conveyed. As the use of plot has been utilized this way, the player is motivated to play the game by creating a goal to reach, with an increase in difficulty that will compel them to keep playing. The video game's identity primarily serves as an active medium. In this instance, the content that is presented is largely determined by the player's actions, as video games have utilized the physical component of a controller or keyboard to grant the player the freedom to develop their own unique story within the game. Due to the universal use of digital media consumption today, films and games have cemented their identity forever in popular culture. But it is also necessary to know that filmmakers also like to adapt some of the most prestigious games of today into feature films. There is no doubt that this endorses the gaming fandom's willingness to invest their time into another form of media with the expectation of receiving a well-developed and well-renowned world within the film. Unfortunately, most adaptations have not been as successful on a production level. Historically, gamers have been anticipating their favourite games to be adapted into film. However, most of the time, this has not been a successful endeavour due to the limitations of film production, which cannot fully reflect the originality of such a game. Considering the immersive nature of games, what are the production elements that films lack? Let us take the Uncharted franchise as a starting point, specifically the first game Drake's Fortune and the film. Due to the game's emphasis on solving puzzles and discovering hidden mysteries, players delve into an 8-hour journey can expect to be rewarded for the time spent playing the game with a rich narrative and character development that contribute to its immersive experience. As we move to film, the imitation of Uncharted, directed by Ruben Fleischer, is crammed within a 2-hour plot. So already, would this work as a televised series to match the game's runtime? Potentially, due to the fact that is mainly down to the linear narrative Uncharted follows, but a game that possesses a complex narrative like Mass Effect and Warcraft that promote excessive action and story-altering decisions, it becomes difficult to capture the essence of the game within the runtime of a 2 to 3 hour film like Uncharted. There seems to be an absurdity to studios removing the most prominent selling points of a well-known franchise only to replace them with something else. It has become difficult to break the trend that has developed over the last few decades. To create a single film, filmmakers take hours of storytelling and encapsulate them into a short film. This causes developers to express concern. If the movie does not reflect the vision of the game, then it is no longer a movie about the game, but rather based upon it. In light of this fear, filmmakers have poisoned the minds of game developers and devoted fans of the game, as they are not willing to take the necessary risk to produce a high-quality adaptation. When filmmakers attempt to fulfill the wish through film adaptations, they often overlook some of the fundamental aspects, as they do not want to mimic the game as closely as possible. Therefore, the director may stir away from the original vision or the newly founded environment may become difficult to interpret by the fandom. It could be argued that film is lacking something that can be adapted to screen, and that is the feeling, as both forms of media can affect the intensity of the connection to the story in different ways. When we think back to our own experiences, we can recall exciting moments in a game. We remember that the experience comes from us as the players. This is because we control what happens as the main character, as we take on various challenges throughout the game. As the norm has always been the player who makes the moments happen, regardless of whether the game has a linear design or an open world, we always have control. For instance, Doom's adaptation from 2005. For an adaptation that incorporates the visualization of the game series, it is considered a technical achievement of its time. Comparatively to gaming, it is most enjoyable when the player is engaged in shooting down as many players as possible. as well as utilizing the least amount of ammunition to achieve a competitive score. Despite how visually appealing the first-person sequence may appear, the thrill is not the same for a passive audience member. Despite its visual appeal, players who can watch the film can feel their competitive nature shine through, as if they feel they could do it better. With all these elements confined within video games, it is difficult to understand whether filmmakers can create an immersive world in another form of media. There are many factors that can determine the success of a film adaptation, one of which is marketing. A film will not be known to the general public if no form of advertisement is to be done. To entice people to watch a film when it is in the process of being made, it must be advertised in a similar manner as every other product is in order to attract a big audience. As a rule of thumb, if an adaptation is to succeed, the immersive familiarity of the gaming world must have an impact on drawing the retrospective fandom into watching the film or televised episode. There is no doubt that the initial campaign to put the game into another form of media plays a crucial role in attracting the fans of the game to come together for a live action film or televised series. Its goal is to establish a sense of richness and an added layer of authenticity to the game's world while presenting some of the most beloved characters from it. It is important to note, however, that these trailers may fail for a number of reasons, one of which is a lack of creativity when it comes to the characters, such as the original Sonic trailer from 2020. Because of this, players are well aware that film adaptations of video games often fail due to the production limitations the film industry faces. Alternatively, video games could be adapted into televised series, as in this case, The Last of Us. It is no secret that projects made by Hollywood operate under high expectations when studios invest hundreds of millions of dollars in making the next groundbreaking project for the big screen that will enthrall and inspire audiences. PlayStation, however, the studio that produced the Last of Us franchise, started utilizing their own connections with Sony Pictures back in 2019 to create games to film adaptations in-house, rather than outsourcing them to external studios. Since then, they have achieved success with their televised series, The Last of Us. Craig Mason, the executive producer, understands as a fan of the game, the emphasis to create successful adaptations is to build a loving relationship with the game itself, rather than outsourcing the game's vision to another studio. Which is why the director of the first installment of The Last of Us game, Neil Druckmann, took up the role of the director for the televised adaptation, to allow his vision to appear in a realistic post-apocalyptic world that creates a sense of realism that from the games. It is because of this that The Last of Us is able to emphasize world building in a way that other games did not or could not. There are scenes in The Last of Us that expand upon the intimate core narrative of the game, such as the debating scene between the two researchers in the 1960s who gradually realizes that humanity has surpassed the point of no return. As a result, scenes like these extend the core narrative elements in ways that do not take away from Joel and Ellie's story, but amplify them in a way that enhances it. There is a good argument for simulating the major story beats of The Last of Us in another medium, but just as exciting as that is, it's amazing how another medium can make all these beats resonate even more loudly in The Last of Us itself. It is perfectly possible to retell the most notable parts of the unforgettable story of the original video game, while also finding ample room to introduce a couple of additional stories that are very much worth telling, that go beyond the scope of its original source. A good adaptation should be able to achieve that, and that's about all you can ask of it. So, is the film industry limited to creating immersive experiences similar to those found in games? Yes, since the players have more control over the story when playing games than watching it unfold passively, which has consistently failed over the decades. But to create such a high-quality adaptation, filmmakers would have to enter the realm of high-end television to leverage the source material of those in the game.